Alright, so procedural texturing with RedShift. Before we hop into that, this is still the Arnold version. I just wanted to make a quick note. If you don't like the way, like if you're trying to eat away at the edge of the dust, which honestly I'm not sure makes super a lot of sense, but if you're trying to eat away at that, what might look a little nicer is if you map that into a ramp shader, and then put a noise just at the edge of the ramp where you were sort of fading this off. That way it wouldn't be all splotchy and weird looking up here, but it would have, you know, the splotch or whatever at the end. Just a weird random note. So I've gone ahead and I'm just going to use the same models. I've gone ahead and added RedShift. So what I'm going to do is pretty much the same thing we did when we started doing Arnold. And I am just going to... I'll just go into my Hypershade and do this actually, what the heck. I'll clear this graph down here, and I will do a RedShift. RedShift material. And I'll call this one, I'll do the red and the blue again. It seemed to have, you know, reasonable enough contrast. And I'm just going to turn, again, the roughness on this a little bit less insane. I will also go ahead and add in... Actually, RedShift is nice. It doesn't force you to put in a light, but I'm just going to go ahead and add in a... what am I doing? A RedShift dim light, just for grins. And... yes. Alright, cool. So I'll make another RedShift shader here. I would actually remember what this is called. RedShift material. And I'll just make this one some kind of metal. I might do chrome if I can find a decent chrome. Tinted glass. Not so much what I'm going for. Alright, sure. Silver. Whatever. Alright, so we have our two base materials. I guess I will just assign this one to be temporarily red, and this one to be temporarily the silver, just so we can see what we're working with here for the metal. Go ahead and open my RedShift render view and just see how terrible that looks. Red is clearly questionable looking. Yes. Delightful. So what have I done to the red? Do I just like make it so rough that you just can't see it? Like, what is going on there? Or did I assign it? Oh shoot. Okay. I think I assigned the red, the Arnold red. And this is why you don't use the same names for things or multiple. Pick a render engine, use that render engine. So I actually want red 1. And I'm going to show you a trick really quick if you guys ever need to... There we go. Now it's red. Alright. So I'm going to show you a really quick trick if you ever need to go in and just sort of delete extra nodes. So like right now, I have all of this nonsense left over from when we were doing the Arnold stuff, and I don't need any of that. So what I'm going to do is go to Edit, Delete Unused Nodes, and do be careful with this. Once you click that, it's going to delete every single shader that's not assigned to an object, right? So if this, you know, new red was not assigned to an object, that would be deleted. Filth is still here because it's assigned to this. So what I'm going to do is I'll just make that Chrome 2 and do an edit, delete unused nodes again. It'll get rid of that filth. You can do the same thing for texture, like, well, normally it doesn't do all of the nodes, but anyway. Okay, so this in this case probably would have been a better thing to do. So just for grins, like I want to see if I can just keep some of those ramp textures and all that stuff so I don't need to remake them. Alright, so you can see I've done undo a few times, I have my textures back. I'm just going to go in really quick and assign this red 1 again. And then if you do edit, delete by type, this time you can do shading groups and materials, and that should really... okay, I think I went back really, really far. And existing material, red 1, and let's make a chrome mushroom, because what could possibly go wrong? Honestly, most times I usually just delete everything. Delete all by type. Utilities, textures, let's do shade levels. Right. Oh wait, sorry, this is literally just delete all by type, my bad. Not delete unused nodes. So, great. Alright, cool. So it looks like I can pretty much only delete unused nodes throughout everything. If you wanted to, you could just sort of select all of your materials. Like in this case, I could just go through marquee select all these, and then since I only have 2, it's pretty easy to do this, and I'll just hit delete, and it'll just delete those. That way I still maintain all my textures. But something I usually do at the end of my scene is I'll go through and do the edit, delete unused nodes. It just cleans up a bunch of extra weird stuff in the scene like you don't really need for anything. So now that I've gone ahead and done that, let's actually get into the procedural part of this. And RedShift, I think their blend node is actually a little bit nicer than Arnold because you don't need to combine so many different things into, like, you don't need to like map a mixed node into a mixed node into a mixed node. They just have a giant thing and it takes like 7 textures and you just layer them in order. It's like a little bit nicer. So if we go and just grab this RedShift Material Blender, you can see it's going to give you this delightful whatever the heck this thing is. And this is the base material, and layer 1 is going to be on top of it, layer 2 is going to be on top of that, layer 3 on top of that. So it allows you to do that with up to 6 materials. So if you only need 6 or fewer layers, you can just use a single RedShift blender and just map everything into that. So it's a little bit kind of less redundant, a little bit easier to keep track of. Honestly, I still use Arnold most of the time just because I'm really lazy. So in this case, what you're going to do is grab your metal texture, middle mouse button, drag that onto the base, right? Because this is going to be the bottommost material of your piece with everything else on top. I'll grab my red and throw that into material 1. And I'll just go ahead and zoom in here, grab my RedShift render view, and cool, that looks insane. I really dislike unmapped dome lights. I'm probably going to throw something into that in a second. RedShift also, just for the record, normally does also have a physical sky. For some reason, it seems like on my computer I've accidentally deleted that somehow. Okay. But honestly, I'm just going to go through and just look into that later. So I'm going to grab my dome light, and this is where you throw in like an HDRI if you had one. Oh, that's fun. Alright, in this case, I'm just going to tint it something that's a little bit less super crazy. Perhaps this lovely orange or something. I don't know. Probably going to look awful. But anyway. Ooh, that's okay. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. And I'm like, no, it's not. That's so bad. And interestingly, this one doesn't allow you to map in. It's been a while since I've actually played with real lighting in RedShift, but this one doesn't seem to allow you to map in like a ramp to that, which is vaguely irritating. So I'm actually just going to see what happens if I just hide the dome light. Nothing great. Alright. In my next video, I'll find a HDRI and throw it in the background. For now, we're just going to run with this. So you can see that this texture here, it works a little bit differently, this material blender, and basically the red is by default not showing up at all. So to make this show up, you actually have to manually slider this up. And then if you want to add in, you know, the blend color is basically like the mix color in Arnold. So what we can do if we want to go into our textures and just grab this checker, which I apparently still have floating around, we could throw that into blend color, and we have basically the same effect that we have from using the Arnold stuff. You can see actually the mushroom looks like crap on this side because I did a planar map on it, so this is why I recommend not using planar maps. But if you're just shooting for a one-angle render, or you need to do some kind of weird stuff like I showed you before with the ramp texture, you can kind of fudge it. So in this case, I'm just going to start out with using this file texture, and I'll just pop that in the blend node, and now we have little scratches here. And also in this case, it's done the thing where it's making red scratches on chrome, which doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. Totally would work for something weird like a paint splotches or whatever, but a lot of times I'll sort of fudge the base material. Like again, we could go in and go into the color balance of our texture, and in this case, apparently it doesn't care if I check alpha as luminance, but we could go through and invert this. It's actually already inverted. Again, make sure as you're doing things that you're paying attention to what the invert button is set to. So if I uncheck that, and this is basically now just a default file that I've just brought in, I'm not done anything to it, it actually does what we expect, right? So we have the chrome base with red paint over the chrome base. So that's the basis sort of this. Just for grins, I'm going to go through and duplicate the red material. I will make this blue. So I'll show you just again, just sort of how the basic mapping of these textures works, and then I will go through and show you how to do a little bit more useful things. So this is if you add a weird blue on top. I'm just going to kind of grab this checker texture again and throw this in. What have I done? What have I done here? Something strange. This might be an instance where I need to... whoops. Oh, I just didn't change the color of the blue. I was like, oh, look, there's squares. I'm an idiot. Okay. Alright, so you can see that's basically kind of how this works. So the process is a little bit faster and more straightforward in RedShift. I usually just start with Arnold because a lot of the nodes are sort of friendlier. There's a little bit more options for doing things. But yeah, so this basically is start at the base material, just keep going down layer by layer by layer. If you decide you need to add something in later, like if you need something between layer 1 and layer 2, you will just need to sort of shift layer 2 down to layer 3. So the other option that you could do if you wanted is leave some of the layers empty in case you need to add stuff in later. So in this case, if I grab the... if I grab this checker texture and I just pop that into layer 3, grab my blue texture and I just pop that into the material color, I should be able to go into layer 2 and just break the connections with both of these, but it's going to give me the exact same effect, right? Because there's no shaders mapped into here. So what I could do is later then I could come back in and put something between the red and the blue. So a lot of times if I know I only need 2 or 3 textures, I'll sort of do this just because it's easier to come back and modify later. Swapping everything out kind of sucks. But yes, so that is the basis of RedShift shading. I'll show you more fun things in the next few videos.